Did you know that Fear was supposed to be the villain in Inside Out and even had a different name? Or that Pixar's original plan was for there to be an exciting encounter between Riley and Joy? Yes, folks, all of that was in the original script of the movie. And there are several sketches and animated scenes with dialogue that show us how Inside Out was supposed to be originally. And we're going to tell you all about this completely different version of Inside Out 2. Everything different! Forget everything we saw and watched in Inside Out in 2015. Originally, Pixar's idea was for Riley's head to function as a place where absolutely everything involving her thoughts would be mixed, including unicorns, small beings that would be distractions, and abstract thoughts, all in one place. And just like in the original movie, Joy would be the emotion responsible for putting everything in order and preparing an amazing day for Riley. And to do that, she would have to control all the other emotions and their impulses. As you may know, originally there would be 17 emotions, and many of them would have proper names. Like pride would be Preston, there would be disgust called Gretchen, and a German-style emotion called Schadenfreude, the name you're seeing on the screen. And fear would be named Freddy. Remember that name well because we're going to talk about him a lot in this video, since unbelievably, Fear, or Freddy as he would be called, would have a deadly battle where he and Joy would become giants in the center of San Francisco. But before we talk about that, we need to understand Riley's growth. As we mentioned, Joy prepared a perfect day for Riley in which she would go to the park and skate a lot, generating many happy emotions that day, especially the moment when Riley was skating and doing several spins while holding onto a sign. And in the original story, the film would already start with Riley living in San Francisco, but having moved there recently. 2 months to be exact. The problem was that Joy was starting to become authoritarian and wanted not only to control all the emotions, but also to keep Riley a child forever. In other words, she didn't want Riley to mature, which was hindering the girl from making friends. It also bothered the other emotions a lot, to the point where Joy suggested that Riley should spit in the face of a girl from her school for saying something she didn't like. And this happened right after Fear suggested that Riley should start a conversation with 2 girls from the new school she had been attending for 2 months. In this context, Fear began to realize that Joy was being harmful to Riley, so much so that Joy herself, to prevent the girl from growing up, was becoming obsessed with the memory of the day she had skated and played a lot. The detail is that in this original version, the emotions would have a headphone inside Riley's head, where when they spoke, Riley would either think the same thing or say what the emotion said, and not just buttons like we see in the original version of the movie. And at this point, Fear, or Freddy, would start helping Riley to socialize with the girls and start forming a friendship with them, contrary to what Joy wanted, which was for Riley to play at the playground even though she was already a teenager. In this one, I'm with Fear. So today, let's put in the comments #Freddy, which is the name of the purple emotion that ended up being lost. We can say that the movie would essentially address how maturing is a very important internal process, but at the same time creates a lot of conflict between emotions. In this way, Joy feels rejected, but ends up thinking a lot and believes she can find a solution for Riley. After all this, Joy still insists that she is right and that Riley should continue to be childish. The problem is that Riley was entering puberty and now needed to act differently. Joy then decides that finding Riley's skating memory and taking it to headquarters would be the only way for the girl to still want to have fun and stop growing. So, she embarks on a journey through the protagonist's subconscious until she manages to find the memory that was still stored, except that instead of sadness, it is Fear, who is named Freddy, who ends up accompanying Joy. But not because he wanted Joy to find the memory, but exactly to prevent that from happening, because he was afraid that Joy wouldn't let Riley go on with her life as she should. And I have to say that he's actually right, and Joy is wrong in this case. Along the way, they meet Bing Bong again, the long-forgotten imaginary friend of Riley's. And not only him, but several other imaginary friends and even the monsters that Riley believed lived in her closet, all living in a sort of abandoned tenement where Riley's old memories kind of lived on the fringe of the girl's thoughts. At some point, Riley and Bing Bong separate from Fear when they realize that he wasn't there to help the girl continue to be a child, which is what Joy wanted most. But Bing Bong also wanted, as it would make him return to Riley's mind. The detail is that Bing Bong is a kind of revolutionary who fights against the destruction in Riley's imagination park that was being carried out by those workers that exist in Riley's mind, where childish memories like castles were being torn down to build things typical of adolescence, like a swear word library, a sarcasm generator, and a new boys search center. And it was against that revolutionary Bing Bong believed he needed to fight and do what he called a revolution. In some way that wasn't shown, Joy and Bing Bong, who also ends up fading away in this version, managed to find the memory, even with Freddy's relentless pursuit, who believes that Joy couldn't actually return to Riley's headquarters because she would only confuse the girl more and cause several problems. Which in a way was true, but there's still one very important thing that would happen after all this: Joy's redemption. And in one of the moments of pursuit, there is a very emotional scene where Joy ends up falling into a kind of ravine and ends up submerged in a river of Riley's subconscious where there were several lost memories. And at that moment, she ends up releasing the skating memory, which, carried by the waters, ends up shattering and ending up on the beaches of Riley's mind. Completely devastated, Joy rushes toward the building she recognizes in Riley's mind, which was where the little girl had grown up in her previous town. There, she encounters a version of young Riley and the two dance together. But there comes a moment when the memory of Riley dressed as a fairy and dancing in front of a mirror appears. And that was all Joy wanted, to stay forever with little Riley. But at the end of the dance, the child version of Riley asks Joy if they can dance together forever. And at that moment, Joy realizes that she couldn't do that because even as Riley grows up, she still needs Joy at headquarters to make some moments joyful, even during puberty and adolescence. So they bid farewell in a heart-wrenching scene. If this scene touched your heart too, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to stay up to date on everything about cartoons and animated movies. The detail is that after this encounter between Joy and little Riley and their farewell, Joy is determined to return to her post. The only problem is that Freddy is also determined not to let that happen, which would result in a wild chase. In trying to return, Joy would encounter fear exactly at the construction site of Riley's mind that was happening in the Imagination Park. Freddy would have convinced the workers that Joy was there to start a revolution with the forgotten imaginary friends and that they needed to stop her at all costs. So they use a suction gun, kind of like a vacuum cleaner, which stores whoever it sucks into a receptacle. The problem is that Joy had changed her mind, but fear wasn't giving her a chance to explain. So they chase her and start crossing various memory realities within Riley's mind, where they pass through places like Riley's favorite amusement park, the girl's old house, until they enter the memories of downtown San Francisco, where both Joy and Freddy and the workers with him become giants and are in pursuit. Then they fall into the water and end up in a forest of Riley's imagination, where Joy falls and gets her legs tangled in a vine. Freddy ends up alone as one of the workers accidentally shoots the other. Fear himself grabs the suction gun and goes after Joy, who manages to ambush Fear and ends up trapping him in his own receptacle when they're inside Riley's classroom memories. He's attacked by an imaginary monster from Riley's head. That was the entire plot that Pixar developed, animated, and even dubbed in some parts. But according to the direction, even with the emotional moment of the encounter between Joy and young Riley, the story didn't quite stick. And that's why the film's director, Pete Docter, was getting sadder and sadder because he believed he would be fired very soon. That's when he had an insight and realized that sadness, the same one he was feeling, could be the missing solution in the movie's story. And that's when the whole script was readapted and Fear, or rather Freddy, was removed from the main story, and Sadness was placed as Joy's companion throughout the time Joy was lost in Riley's mind. I have to confess that I would have loved to see Joy and Riley meeting, or the scene of Joy and Fear giants in San Francisco. That would have been amazing for sure. But in reality, the story of the 2015 film is really cool, and Inside Out is one of Disney's biggest successes in history. Seriously, I love this movie. We're leaving 2 videos for you to keep having fun with us here. The one on the left is really good. Thanks!